everybody, and welcome to the Wench Bench. Don't know what I did, but we're friends that sit and talk about fabulous fictional females and specifically how their stories have influenced us throughout our lives. My name is Fonda.
And my name is Alison.
Today, Alison's going to be talking about Bond girls, multiple female characters from the Bond movies.
That is correct.
Yes. So we're going to be hearing about a lot of different ladies. Alison's going to give us opinions. And I'm just going to say, I've only seen 2 James Bond movies.
What ones?
There are a lot of the newer ones with,
okay,
I can't remember the actor's name.
Daniel Craig?
Yes. With Daniel Craig.
Ugh,
yes.
So good.
I've seen 2 with him in it.
Yeah,
Never
I'm guessing
any of the
probably
ones.
Casino Royale.
No, I saw the one with the guy with the weird face.
How dare you? Casino
sorry.
Royale is genuinely probably my favorite James Bond film of all of the James Bond films.
I'm sorry, they were movies I got
perfection.
invited to, so I didn't really.
That's okay. Quantum of Solace was fine. And then you probably watched Skyfall, because Quantum of Solace is the one with the guy with the weird face, and Skyfall is the one with the Adele song.
Yes, I was going to say that song. Let the sky fall is the only way I remember that movie.
That is how a lot of people signify what James Bond movies are. What is because of that main song. It is a highly coveted thing to get to record and to get to do. And a lot of the movies.
Adele did great.
She did an excellent job. She did a very, very good job.
Let's just talk about Adele.
Let's just talk about Adele and music and get completely off track.
We are now a musical-based genre at all times.
Yes. Something that I know drastically less about than fictional characters. Let's put it that way.
Oh, good.
So first of all, I would like to explain what exactly is a Bond girl.
Please do.
For our audience. So a Bond girl is a love interest or female companion of James Bond, who sometimes has a ridiculous name, but is always sexy. That is the easiest way to describe a Bond girl, because there's kind of different categories. But before I get into the ladies and their oftentimes limited contributions to the stories of James Bond, I'll give a little information on what kind of movies these are and the world we inhabit when watching them.
Okay.
I'm strictly going to be talking about the movies because I have not read the books, nor do I plan on reading them, and I have also not played the video games. So don't at me. I don't want to.
I have played the Nintendo 64
GoldenEye?
007 inspired one. GoldenEye, yeah.
Yeah. There's the big one. I've seen that one played, but I have never personally played it.
I had a hard time with that game, but also, even though I love video games, I'm notoriously bad at shooting games.
Oh, yeah. No. First-person shooters are not my thing. I play Mario.
Yes.
Like Yoshi. Those are my jam. So James Bond, otherwise known as Agent 007, is a fictional character created by author Ian Fleming in 1953. He has been portrayed on the big screen by Sean Connery, David Niven, George Lazenby, Roger Moore, Timothy Dalton, Pierce Brosnan, and Daniel Craig. There have been 27 movies in total, 2 of which were not done by Eon Production and are often not counted among the official movies. They are classified as a spy action genre, and it follows British Agent 007 around the globe, where he fights terrorists and corrupt governments and power-hungry millionaires, etc., etc. You get a lot of repetition on the villains.
Sounds like it.
The films all have a very basic structure, repeating many of the same tropes and scenes over and over again, such as Bond getting captured and left to die only to escape in the last minute, intense car chases, Bond being chased by a helicopter while he is on the ground, happens more often than you think it would, and my personal favorite is multiple movies have ended this way, where Bond and one of the Bond girls are in some sort of water rescue craft, whether it be a lifeboat, some sort of weird like submarine shuttle thing. But they end up in this watercraft and they bone. It's happened multiple times, enough to make it a trope in Bond movies, and I love it, and it's my favorite.
Really?
Yeah. I think there's like 4 or 5 different movies that have all ended with Bond kissing a Bond girl in a life raft or some sort of water vehicle.
Huh.
Yeah, fun fact there. It's great.
The more you know.
The more you know. These movies are by no stretch feminist masterpieces. The way that they treat women is not particularly well, and often falls into barely being better than a sexy lamp.
Barely being better than a sexy lamp?
Yeah, you better believe the majority of these do not pass the Bechdel test, and some of them barely pass the sexy lamp test. The sexy lamp test, for viewers who do not remember, I believe we've talked about it before, is where if a female character could be replaced by a sexy lamp, it's not great. And it's happened. It's fine.
If a lamp can replace a human being.
Yes. Nevertheless, though, I love these movies so much. I watch them specifically for the escapist fantasy that they are. I like my Bond films to be action-packed. I want Bond to be sexy and suave and charming, and I want him to get laid, and I want to be intrigued by the plot, but not have to think too hard about it. And, like, it's just, there's something comforting about going into a James Bond film and know exactly what I am getting. And that's because these films have gone back decades, and we have always been getting the same thing. So I understand the theory behind people wanting James Bond to be something different. But for me, I want that to be something, I want that to be its own thing. Like when people talk about having a female James Bond, I want female spy movies. That sounds fucking great.
Yeah.
I don't want like a woman to be James Bond. Like in my mind, that's not what these movies are or have ever been. They're not particularly like intelligent films. Like they're just action spy pulp, essentially. Would love a different Bonds of different colors would be
Idris Elba, please.
Excellent. I wish. I feel
we have to be on this hill.
How many times does people have to die on this hill? But yes, like I would love to see that sort of diversity, and I think that they are working towards having the female characters in the James Bond films become better. And that is a change that I would like to see. I would like to see these female characters getting more of a story, getting more of a chance to affect the film in a positive way. But yeah, I love these movies. They're great. And we just recently watched all of them, except for, I believe, the 2 non-canon ones. Although I have seen both of them just a long time ago. Of all the James Bond films, most of the ones that I do like the best are, in fact, the ones that have the more interesting female characters in them. Because obviously, pretty sure all of you could have guessed that. But yeah, a lot of these movies kind of exist in their own. They're not a series. Like, you don't have to have watched all of the James Bond movies in order to watch From Russia with Love or like any of them one off. Sometimes they bring back characters, but it's not actually like vital to the plot to know what happened in any of the other movies. Except for in the Daniel Craig ones, where you kind of have to watch all of them, which I think was a part of the failure of Daniel Craig. His movies didn't do like great. They weren't terrible, but I think they could have done better if they didn't try and tie everything together so much. Because like I said, Casino Royale is arguably my favorite of all of the movies, period. And I think Daniel Craig was a great Bond, but I just think they got a little too all about making it complicated when it doesn't need to be that complicated.
Do you think it's because it was also like the time that Skyfall came out? Like it was in that era, or I feel like a lot of writers, producers, and companies really wanted to make audiences feel like they were in a thinking movie. Do you get what I mean?
Yes. I think the new James Bond films suffered from the same problems that the new Star Wars films suffered from, where they're like, well, we want to give you something, like, we want to make this new and better. And like, if you don't like it, you're just not smart enough for it. And it's like, no, I just want Bond to have to fight against somebody who wants to fuck up the world. I want him to win, and I want him to get laid, and I want it to be tense and action packed and sexy. It's not a lot to ask. Like, I don't have high expectations for Bond films. Let's put it that way. But yeah, I think they tried to thread them all together a little too much and on their own. And then they wanted to use Spectre as a villain, but then they didn't have the rights to Spectre. And so they made it Quantum, and then Quantum became Spectre, and everything got really convoluted and confusing. And we barely understood it when we watched all four, like basically back to back. I don't even remember when we were trying to watch them all as they just came out in theaters. So it was a rough time. Poor Daniel Craig. Okay, back on topic. In a movie universe like this one, it's hard to pinpoint how and why certain female characters stand out more than others. One of the big ones for me is their story, if they even got one at all. Bond girls are often subject to being damseled and sometimes even fridged in the plot if it calls for that. But then we get others who have their own drive and purpose beyond helping James. Their goals tend to align with his because of course they do. But overall, we do get women who have full and complete backstory. And Bond girls tend to fall into 4 categories. We have sexual partners. We have the main sidekick. We have the femme fatale, and we have the sacrificial lamb.
The sacrificial lamb?
I will kind of explain these all a little bit more so that we can, when I talk about the actual ladies, we can decide what sections they belong in, because these need not be mutually exclusive. Oftentimes they do cross over. So you can oftentimes the sacrificial lamb is also a sexual partner because, you know, you have to tie that together. You have to make him care, I guess. Because the only reason why James Bond would care about a woman is if he was fucking her. It's fine. I told you these are not feminist masterpieces. We have problems. There are many. We are not going to get super into the problems. We are going to try and focus on the good things that they've done. So
the good things.
The good things, because there are some really good things. To break down those categories a bit. So sexual partners are often one-dimensional characters who are there to show you how charming and sexy James Bond is, and they contribute very little to the plot. The main sidekick is usually the most fleshed out option for a Bond girl. She is the one who would have her own story, her own wants beyond James Bond. They are capable and interesting. My favorite is when this girl makes Bond like really work for it. Like there's a very common will they won't they thing with a lot of the main sidekicks where it takes until all the way at the end of the movie when they finally hook up. Oftentimes in a life raft.
In a life raft? Is
like, just wrap it back to the end. Or wrap it back to the beginning where I talked about the life rafts. So yeah, like I love that little part because they refuse to sort of let him have any sort of sexual contact with them. And by the end of the movie, there's like been a ton of sexual tension. And the audience is just excited that they finally get together because you root for them by the end of it. The femme fatale is one of the women who would be working in opposition to James. They are intimidating in a sexy way and have been known to bang Bond as well. once or twice being turned to James's side by what we can only assume is his magical sex powers.
Magical sex powers?
Ladies go crazy when they have sex with James Bond, and it just is what it is. They get weird, and bad things happen to them. And it's a dangerous thing to be a Bond girl.
Does he have like a...
He's just very charming. I don't know.
But like,
it's a suspension of like reality. He is like the ultimate like male power fantasy, whether that be for men or for women. Because like men want to be him and women want to be with him. That is James Bond. He is that ultimate character type.
Oh, well.
And this brings us to the last category, which is sacrificial lambs. These movies really do love to fridge a lady. Most often, they are killed to propel the story forward and to add stakes of why Bond especially wants to be the bad guy, not just for Queen and Country, but also for this lady he had a one-night stand with. It has also been a learning opportunity for him to have some character development in multiple different movies, which is pretty standard fridging material.
Oh, I hate that word.
It explains it so well.
But I hate it. It makes me physically uncomfortable.
It should. It should.
Oh. It's doing its job, I guess.
So now I'm going to talk about a few of my favorite ladies. Now you have an idea of what Bond girls are. You get the world that we live in. You understand why I like these movies. Now we're going to talk about the ladies.
Thank God. Ready to move on.
Ready to move on. Okay, so the first one is Mayday. As I mentioned, a lot of times they have funny names. This is one of them. So Mayday is portrayed by Grace Jones, like the Grace Jones. She is tall, she is stunning, she is incredible, she is intimidating as fuck. So Mayday was in the 14th movie, A View to Kill, with Roger Moore as James Bond. She is...
How many Bond movies are there?
27.
Wait. Really?
I said that at the beginning. There are 27 James Bond movies.
I didn't hear the 20. I just heard there's 7.
No, there's a lot.
I would have had this reaction earlier. I misheard you. I was listening to everything else but the number of movies.
No, there's a lot.
Okay, we'll move past it. You already indicated the amount. This is a late reaction from me.
A late reaction from Fonda. How do you think they had so many actors playing James Bond?
I don't know. I thought it was like... I don't know. I'm naive. It's
fine. So she is originally an antagonist in the movie, working for an evil billionaire. What billionaire isn't evil, though?
Touche.
He is named Max Zorin and played by Christopher Walken. The two of them are entangled in genetic experiments, a part of which he is using to rig horse races. Both Mayday and Zorin are unnaturally strong.
Okay.
And it is believed that they were both a part of eugenics experiments in Nazi Germany. It is not like in the movie explained that is why Mayday is strong, but you're pretty sure that that's kind of what happened. It's alluded to. But yeah, both of them are products of those experiments.
Okay.
Do you know what eugenics was?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Selective breeding for anybody who doesn't.
Yes, I am familiar with that.
Yeah, super questionable stuff.
Yes.
So at one point, James does end up seducing her as a way to try and remain undetective in his investigation, but it does not work because she is too smart for him. At the end of the movie, she gets betrayed by Zorin. Oh, by the way, spoilers, duh. These movies are so old.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's like if we were talking about the goddamn Titanic.
Yeah, like, deal with it. it doesn't ruin the plot of the movie because I'm not really explaining the plot. But she gets betrayed by Zoran, who almost drowns her. So she decides in like the final act of the movie to help James save the day as revenge. Not for James, but for herself, because she's a petty bitch and I love it. In order to do this, they need to load a bomb onto a railroad cart. Just go with it. Don't ask questions. Okay, but without someone keeping the brakes from locking, it won't get very far. So she has to stand on the railroad cart, make sure the brakes don't lock up, and like ride this cart with this bomb to go and save the world. So she sacrifices herself, which is a noble sacrifice. Wonderful trope. Love it. Every time. Gets me. And then with her last words, she tells Bond to get Zoran for her. And then she blows up and saves the world. But she's awesome. And I love her so much. So the reason why I like her is not only like, is she stunning? Like, look up pictures of Mayday. She is statuesque and incredible.
I'll do that right now while you tell me why you love her.
Mm-hmm. She is also portrayed as incredibly strong and shown to be a very tall woman while also being sexy. But it's not like, oh, she's sexy even though she's strong and tall. It's like, no, she's hot because of those things. Like she carries herself with this confidence and with this power that you can't help but like respect her. And she has this incredible like hairstyle and she's just stunning and gorgeous and like, just a presence on screen.
A presence.
An absolute presence.
I thought for a second, I was like, am I mishearing? Did you say presents? As in like multiple gifts? And I'm like, both could be true.
Both. She is also a gift to the world. I also like that she decides to join James for her own reasons, like not just because like, oh, like we had sex and he showed me the error of my ways. Like it was genuinely because she was mad and just like wanted revenge. And I love that for her. Also, it's nice seeing a female character get to play the strong silent type archetype where she's just like intimidating. Like I said, her presence is captivating and she doesn't have to speak a lot. She doesn't have to like do these things to have you pay attention to her on screen. You're just like automatically drawn to her and she just has it's amazing. And it's a pretty like the movie overall is a pretty good one. Like A View to Kill is a pretty solid James Bond movie.
Okay.
I mean Christopher Walken is fun as the other villain, so
Christopher Walken is fun.
Christopher Walken's great. So next up, we have Wei Lin.
Wei Lin. Okay.
Played by the incredible Michelle Yeoh, who we talked about in our Gunpowder Milkshake episode. And she also is in Crazy Rich Asians and is just incredible. Just wonderful.
She's a great actress.
So good. So good. And she's so good in this movie. So she is in the 18th Bond film called Tomorrow Never Dies with Pierce Brosnan as Bond. Brosnan was my original Bond because my mother loved him and because I was of the age when I first started watching these movies. That's when Brosnan was Bond. So in this movie, yet another evil man with too much money is trying to start a war between the People's Republic of China and the United Kingdom. Through some dealings, he will have exclusive media coverage rights of this war, and then he will basically take over all media. The plot of this one is mediocre, especially considering like the world we live in now, watching it again with all the crazy shit that happens with like our own media and online like news sources. Doesn't age particularly well, but it's so worth a watch specifically for the character of Wei Lin because she is chef's kiss. She is incredible. There's also a few very fun scenes of the female gaze in this movie, which we will get to. So Wei Lin is a colonel in the Chinese People's External Security Force. She is a skilled martial artist and rivals Bond in their spy skills.
Spy skills.
So she is a spy.
A spy.
A spy. Her and Bond originally believe they are enemies, but form a tentative alliance and work together to discover and stop the true plot. There is so much sexual tension in this movie. It is incredible. They have so much chemistry. It's amazing. The will they, won't they dynamic throughout the movie is like, it's just so good. And then at the end, when they do finally get together, it's just, so good. So worth it. Specifically, at one point, they get handcuffed together and have to ride a motorbike at the same time. And this is like I've known women who don't really like car chase movies and stuff. And this motorcycle chase is like, oh, I get it now. I get why men like this, because it's like, it's somehow sexy, this motorcycle race. Because they're handcuffed together and because of the way that they have to like exist on one motorcycle while handcuffed together. It's just, it's so good. It starts with them both needing to hold on to like one side of the handle. So she's behind him with one hand on one side and has the other hand on the other side. But then because this is so restricting and they don't have a lot of movement, she instead spins around to like be facing him, like straddling his lap so that he can have both hands on the handlebars and she can have a hand free to like do shit, to shoot. And at one point she grabs like a crowbar and she starts like knocking boxes and stuff off because there's other people on motorcycles chasing them.
Is that the first movie that's done that? Like, did that inspire other future movies to have like...
Probably. Okay. It was incredible and it was amazing and I love it. And just watch this scene, everybody. Just go find it online. It is...
Everybody.
It is perfection. People need to see this scene. It is so good. So yeah, she's like straddling his lap and the whole time there's this witty banter between them and they're both constantly trying to one up one another. And there's this like competition and it's like sort of enemies to lovers and it's so good. I love it so much. So after then the hits keep coming because right after this motorcycle race, for some reason they're very dirty. And so they need to have a shower out in the street, which is, there's just a faucet in the street. So like they're not alone by any means.
Got you.
But you get this like very long lingering shot of Pierce Brosnan in the shower.
Of course we do.
Just like in his like white like tank top. And they're still handcuffed together, by the way. So they're flirting while showering. They are both soaking wet. And she's like distracting him by flirting him and getting very close, all while she's taking off her earring and picking her handcuff so that she can get out. And then she handcuffs him to the shower and like fucks off. And he sits there and he just like, oh my God. That's why I'm like telling people to go watch this scene because he clearly is pissed off, but also super turned on by it. And then he ends up ripping like the shower because it's this shitty little shower, so he like rips the pipe off the wall and like it's like a very long scene with the motorcycle scene and then the shower scene and then there's this fight scene right after and it just is so punchy and it's so good and she's just matching him every time, just perfectly on his level. He doesn't get to like show her up or anything. She's never like lessened by his presence. Unfortunately, during the climax, she does get damseled a little bit because obviously James Bond still has to be the hero.
Of course he does.
But yeah, like I'll forgive that because of the rest of the movie where she does a bunch of other cool shit. This is one of the movies that ends with him getting lucky on like a lifeboat, like watercraft thing. Yeah.
Is there a fantasy with getting fucked on a boat-shaped
I don't know.
object?
I'm pretty sure it started with Sean Connery, I think was the first one to get lucky in a lifeboat. Yeah, there's also a big reason why we're not talking about any of the earlier films, and that's because all of the women in the earlier films are basically useless. They have their moments
to be useless.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. They have their moments, but they're not particularly like in-depth characters. They don't really get a lot of story. They're very shallow, and so I'm not talking about any of them. Some of them are fine. Like some of them are like very iconic, but meh.
Just all the types of vehicle type things. I don't myself envision wanting to be fucked on water.
That's fair.
I think because
James Bond loves it.
So the fact that it just seems to be a theme of James Bond movies is just like interesting.
Yeah, it's one of those things that there's that joke where it's like, if I had a nickel for every time this happened, I would have 2 nickels.
Yeah.
It's not that much money, but it's still a weird coincidence. Like, I think it's like Phineas and Ferb or something. Like,
Phineas and Ferb.
Yeah, I don't know where that like meme came from, but that's what I think. Cause it doesn't happen that often, but it happens often enough that it's a weird coincidence that they're just like, yeah, let's end a couple movies like this. But basically Wei Lin is just like super competent, like crazy sexy, incredibly cool. Just awesome. Next, we're going to talk about Xenia on a top.
Wait, Xenia
on a top.
On a top.
Because she likes to be on a top.
Oh, I hate I know, okay.
I mean, I could have talked about Pussy Galore, which is actually another character who is actually pretty awesome, but we didn't need to get into that today. But yeah, so Xenia is gonna. That's just the beginning of what is gonna make Fonda blush when I talk about Xenia. And those who have watched this movie know why Fonda will blush.
No, what, Alison? What are you setting me up for?
Xenia is played by Femke Jensen, who is from probably X-Men. Most people would know her from. Played Jean Grey.
Okay.
Generally, great gal.
Okay.
So she is in the 17th one, Goldeneye, which a lot of people have seen. This is Brosnan's first film as Bond.
Oh, good for you, Brosnan.
So I'm not going to get too into the plot of this movie because she doesn't need it. I can just explain who she is as a person. And you don't need to know anything about plot because she's just fabulous and sociopathic. 100%. Absolutely insane. So Xenia is an ex-fighter pilot from the Soviet Air Force who gets off on killing people, especially when she can do it with her thighs.
Her thighs?
Uh-huh. So she will like crush men's heads between her thighs, all while making basically sex noises.
Here I was trying to look her up on my phone. And as soon as you finish your sentence,
she wears a lot of leather.
Like, is it skin tight leather?
Yes, lots of like very dominatrix vibes.
Okay. Okay.
So yeah, she kills men by crushing their heads between her thighs, and she takes great pleasure in it.
I mean, that is a feat. I've always told my husband, if I could crush a watermelon with my thighs, I would. And that would be a great party trick, but also a good like self-defense maneuver if ever needed.
Uh-huh. It's also a big thirst trap on TikTok. So
what?
That's fun. Yeah, there's tons of people on TikTok, lots of lesbians who crush a watermelon between their thighs. And it's weirdly hot, I guess. I don't know. Some of them are good. Some of them I'm just like, yes, I can see why that is something that people would be attracted to. And other times I'm like, doesn't really do it for me. So very much depends on who's doing the watermelon crushing, I guess.
And probably like them. You know what? We're moving on. I don't want to envision thigh muscles right now.
No?
I mean, I I do, but I also want to listen to you talk about.
Yeah, envisioning thigh muscles is distracting, so I will give you that.
Thank you. Thank you.
So despite her best efforts, her and Bond never actually bone, which is surprising considering how much they flirt. And they also share plenty of sexually charged scenes. She is one of the like super queer coded villains. At one point telling the sidekick / love interest Bond girl, Natalia, to wait her turn to be subjected to her crushing thighs. So Xenia doesn't just kill men with her thighs. She also is equal opportunist and kills women, hinting that she's bi.
Ooh.
Bi icon, Xenia on a top.
Xenia on a top.
For most of the film, it seems that her and Bond are competing to be the bigger man, as it were. So they're constantly kind of, it's not quite so much like it was with Wei Lin, where they're trying to like be a better spy than one another. It's like Xenia's trying to like prove that she's like Bond's equal, more like both sexually and like physically, I guess. So yeah, there's like this weird sort of competition vibe.
I'm a fan of a competition.
For more on the queer coding in these movies, I will have Fonda link a very fun article that like super breaks down all of the lovely ways you could read the subtext of these movies to make them more queer, which is a very fun way to look at them. It's a really long article and it's great.
Check the episode notes.
Yeah. So basically, Xenia is a queer gal's dream, and for many may have acted as that queer awakening character. She's been called that by many people online. She's absolutely insane and wildly capable and terrifying, but in like a sexy way. So she meets her demise in a very fitting way by being crushed between two branches that resemble thighs.
Nice.
Yeah. And Bond gets this witty one-liner. She always did enjoy a good squeeze.
I hate that. I hate that. I mean, like, it's witty because of the play on words in the situation, but just the use of the word squeeze. I don't know. I just... dang it.
Yep. But Xenia's great. Also awesome. Kind of like a bit more of the like Brosnan gets very into the wildly fantastical sort of Bond that a lot of people joke about with the jetpack and like that kind of shit with the crazy gadgets and the incredibly flamboyant and out there villains. But yeah, she was one of them and she was excellent.
Ooh.
So the next lady we're going to talk about is Vesper Lynd. So this one, you might recognize the name. She was played by Eva Green in Casino Royale, the first Daniel Craig movie. And she also made small appearances in the following movies as well because her character's story was kind of carried through. In the movie, Vesper begins as basically Bond's babysitter. He needs to enter a high-stakes poker game, and she is in charge of the money. She, like Bond, is an orphan and is quite sharp and witty, often...
Wait, he's an orphan?
Yes. You saw Skyfall. That's where it explains that, like, M basically, like, actually, Quantum explains where M basically, like, preys on young men who are angry and don't have families.
Right. Sorry. So I have seen them, but remembering that information is very different for me.
That's fair.
I was like, oh, that's so sad.
It is sad. Whether or not all of the Bonds through history and the other movies have all been orphans or whatever, it doesn't matter. Daniel Craig's Bond is an orphan.
Okay. And this one, they're sharing a bond over both being orphans. Got it.
Correct.
Okay, continue.
Yeah, so she tries not to give in to his charms, but after a fight scene where she feels responsible for a man's death, she retreats into her hotel shower. He finds her there and comforts her, showing her a softer side to him. He also kisses the blood from her hands, and it is a very emotional and surprisingly sensual scene. It's like physically intimate, but not like in a forceful way. Like it's a beautiful tender scene between the two of them, and you get to see kind of their, because they both very much throughout the movie before this point had kind of a mask on of this confidence, and then they let that sort of fall away in this pretty beautiful shower scene, which is sweet.
Aww.
So after Bond wins the card game, the two are captured by the bad guy and separated. They are eventually saved, and while recovering in the hospital, they fall deeply in love and run off to Venice. It is here that we find out Vesper has betrayed Bond and taken all of the winnings from the casino game to give to the people that saved them. During this final fight, she gets locked in an elevator, which begins to sink as the entire building sinks into the waters as well. She locks herself in and ends up drowning, which is very sad.
Aww.
Bond tries to act like it does not hurt, but it turns out that she traded the money for his life, and this sets him on a movies-long revenge mission, which is kind of how the other movies come into play, is where he learns more about her past and why she made those decisions. We do end up finding more about her, but I was, like I kind of mentioned before, I wasn't really a super huge fan, especially because I don't like some of the choices that they made for her, because it made her seem like kind of flighty.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah. So I don't know. I prefer to just not. I'd have preferred if they had just left her alone for this incredible story that they had told in Casino Royale. Because that movie is like, oh my God, if you only ever watch one like James Bond movie, watch Casino Royale. It is a masterclass in James Bond movies. It's fucking fabulous. The reason I like her so much is that we really got to see like a love story. It wasn't just about like passion and like high adrenaline, and it wasn't just that. Like it was a love story in a Bond movie, which was not something that we really got to explore before. We got to see two people being vulnerable and like wanting to protect each other, but she was flawed and she made mistakes and she chose to do dangerous things for love, and it all kind of came back to haunt her in the end, which like she kind of chose to die because she betrayed Bond. Like she hated herself for having done that. And it's just so sad. And then he like
looking very emotional right now.
It's so sad because he and up like getting her out, and then he like tries to do CPR, and then he's just like sitting there on like a roof, clearly upset and he's confused, and she's dead, and it's so sad. And it's so good. It's such a good movie. But yeah, she's a fascinating character. And I like that they didn't take away all of the like the tropes of her falling in love with Bond, and like they didn't take away the tropes, but they gave her character more depth. And so it was like, I think it was a positive move forward by still having, like, they still killed her in the end for his emotional growth, but she still got to have a story. She still got to have purpose and reason throughout the movie beyond him. And there's this very cute scene when they first go to the poker game. She refuses to play the part of his arm candy. And then they have this sort of like unspoken standoff, like across the room, as like this battle of wills as they just like stare at each other. It's very good. It's an excellent relationship, and she's an excellent character, and flawed and complicated, and
we love a flawed, complicated woman.
Sure do. Speaking of a flawed and complicated woman, we cannot talk about Bond girls without talking about the Queen Bond girl, which is M. So
the Queen Bond girl.
Uh-huh.
What movie is she from?
All of them. Well, the character M is from all of them. So M is like,
is M like
the head MI6.
Okay. Mm-hmm. I was like, the name sounds familiar, but I couldn't figure out why. And then as soon as you said she was in all of them, and she's like the head, I was like, oh. Okay. Yes.
So Judi Dench actually took over the role of M in GoldenEye. So she started with Pierce Brosnan and continued until she died in the Craig films. And M was played by some dude before that. I love that they changed it to a woman. I thought that the story choices that they made with her as a character were really interesting, and I very much enjoyed them. It's arguable whether or not someone would include M in the Bond girl title, but as a female character who has a massive impact on Bond's life, I kind of do, because she's like a major point in his life. Her relationship between the two different Bonds is also really interesting, because Judi Dench kind of played it differently with Brosnan than she did with Craig. And I think that came down to a lot of the stories that they were telling, because Brosnan was a lot more fun. Like his Bond movies were very like fun, like lighthearted, with like a little bit of that like kind of darkness. So Brosnan was like upbeat and rakish, I would explain his Bond. When she played off of him, she kind of played as like a straight man sort of character. So she was his guide. So he was kind of like chaotic in a way, and she sort of just pointed him where he needed to, she pointed the gun, which was James Bond. Yeah, so she was serious and brought out the best in him, but also couldn't help but have like a small smile when he would get up to his old tricks. So she was kind of like, oh, Bond. But at one point, he actually gets captured, and she refuses to negotiate for his release during one of the Brosnan films. She's like, no, he knows what he's supposed to do. And then they kind of bring that back later with like in Quantum of Solace, when that's what happened to the bad guy in that one, is she refused, like, you're an agent, we do not negotiate with terrorists, no matter how much you think that I care about you. She's stone cold. And I love it.
Alison made a face very much so expressing she does indeed love it.
Love it. It's so good. But with Craig's Bond, she was almost more of a mother figure, pushing him to be better, since Craig kind of seemed like a young version of Bond, whereas like other ones were very much when he was already well into his career. Craig seemed very like almost green, even though he was so talented. And so their relationship and their dynamic was fascinating to watch. I loved all of those parts in Skyfall. She was just getting to watch the two of them play off of each other was such a nice change to having him be with like a younger possible like love interest character, having this different kind of relationship. I thought was really a really good choice for them to make.
Mm-hmm.
Dench brought a stoicism to the character that can only be brought by a dame, because Dame Maggie Smith, like all of them, they like all those like older British ladies like Helen Mirren, like, oh, I love them. There's just something great about them, and they're fabulous. I just want to watch more of them. I think it comes from how a lot of them started like on stage. They really have that like captivating presence.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So she was cool and collected, even in the face of death. She never let her enemies see her sweat. She could also be very fairly called cold and calculating, because everything she does is for Queen and country, even if that means sacrificing somebody who she genuinely seems to care about. Which is fun.
Is like both a very interesting character trait and character flaw at the same time.
Yes. She's so fascinating, and is such a fascinating character. Even in all that, though, you can still see how deeply she cares about Bond. He is like special to her, even to other agents. He is different. It's like a little soft spot of her otherwise impenetrable armor. Oh. And yeah, their relationship is so complicated and just great, just excellent. Such a good relationship, and she's just such a good character. I love seeing a woman like in a leadership role, not necessarily being judged for doing all of the things that leadership role would require of her. It's like she's not any less harsh than a man would be in that position. In fact, she's possibly more harsh, because she needs to be in order to like have made it where she was.
Yes.
So the very last one we're talking about, who is another character we can't not talk about.
Can't not
talk about. It's Moneypenny.
Moneypenny.
Oh, Miss Moneypenny.
I need to look this lady up while you talk about her.
You're going to get a lot of different Moneypennies because Moneypenny has been there since the very beginning. She is a staple in James Bond movies. Oh, she's
see
just
what
fabulous.
you mean by I'm getting a lot of different faces.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Yeah, so she is another questionable inclusion in this episode, but I think she deserves to be here, and that's what matters.
Ooh, who's the... I like this woman, the newer lady playing Eve Moneypenny, I think.
Yes. So we're going to talk about that.
Yes, take me through.
She's great. So Miss Moneypenny is the secretary to M, and throughout all of the films, she has a very flirtatious and often sexually charged relationship with Bond. So Bond's interactions with Moneypenny and the way they flirt will always be a case of like, I know I shouldn't like this because it's harassment and I'm supposed to be a feminist, but I also love it because he comes into the office and he flirts with her and he brings her flowers and chocolates and shit and she flirts back with him, and like there's just this relationship that they have, and it's like, this is inappropriate, but it's fine. It's it's fictional, so it's fine. In the Craig films, though, she gets a bit of a revamp, and she is played by Maoni Harris and starts out as a fellow agent, only to be recruited by the new M as his assistant. And yeah, like, so she gets like she gets more of a story, and she gets to be more in charge and gets a little bit more depth than just being like kind of a fun comic relief character.
Comic relief.
The new Moneypenny gets a very sexy scene in one of the new James Bond films where she shaves Bond with a straight razor, and it's this kind of like scene showing both a trust and like a mutual respect between the two characters. It's nice to see a relationship that never crosses, a relationship with a woman who theoretically he could have sex with, but it never crosses that line. Like there's just the will they or won't they. That's the one line James Bond won't cross, I guess.
I'm always a fan when there are good platonic relationships in a movie, and it's always been hard because I feel like whenever there's a male-female friendship, there's always the question of like, well, like at some point they're gonna get together, right? Like at some point that's gonna happen in this movie.
They're gonna fuck though, right?
And it just reminds me of like Robin from Stranger Things.
Yeah.
In season 3, where like if the whole time I honestly did think that was gonna be where it might go, and it didn't, and I was so fucking happy because they were just like good friends. And so it's nice that Bond has just a good friend that happens to be a lady.
He does, and she's so great. And a couple people argue about whether or not in that movie they like had sex after that scene. I didn't read it that way. Apparently there was a deleted scene where they got like interrupted, and so it couldn't move further past that. But I do not consider, like, I think that would kind of ruin the character if they ever actually got together, because that's not the point of her character. Because I don't know, they just flirt and that's it. They're like, she's like his work wife and that's it. And yeah, just having this like this one constant female character who is there all the time it's been nice. I always look forward to seeing Moneypenny, and I like what they did with her. I think that was another one of my thumbs up for the new movies and what they did well, because I enjoyed her change. So yeah, there are plenty of other Bond girls, I'm sure. I'm sure everybody has their favorites and their least favorites, because I certainly have plenty of least favorites. But those are the big ones, and it's a little dive into the world of James Bond and some chatting about a world that I love and movies that I love.
If there is I know we've talked a lot about them, but if there's one movie you would suggest to someone to watch strictly for a Bond girl, not necessarily for like James Bond, which one would you suggest they watch first?
So if you've never watched a James Bond movie before, watch Casino Royale. Because not only is Vesper Lynd an excellent Bond girl, you get the incredible storyline. There's just a story in general is good. Somehow they make a card game so fucking interesting. And it's incredible. Mads Mikkelsen is the bad guy in that. He plays Le Chiffre, and he is great. So the whole movie itself is just excellent. Vesper's great. M's great. Daniel Craig, wonderful showing. That movie is, it's an excellent movie.
Okay.
But for the fun Bond girl experience, I would suggest watching Tomorrow Never Dies. Like I said, the plot's a little hokey with the media and stuff, but Michelle Yeoh as Waylon, like the sexual chemistry, the excitement, that like whole motorcycle scene, 100% would suggest watching that one. It's fun. And yeah, Waylon is awesome. So great. So two pretty different movies tonally.
Got you.
Casino Royale is very serious. It is a very toned back, serious Bond movie. Tomorrow Never Dies is pretty over the top. Pretty ridiculous. But yeah, so those would be my two suggestions. First, Casino Royale if you've never seen a Bond movie. If you are aware of the Bond movie franchises, maybe you've watched all the new ones and you haven't yet dabbled in the old ones yet. Yeah, Tomorrow Never Dies.
I'm writing them down. Nice.
Yeah. So yeah, what are you excited about, Fonda?
Well, let me tell you, I just finished watching Exandria Unlimited Calamity, and I am an emotional train wreck.
Yes.
For anyone that doesn't know, it's Critical Role's, like they have a sort of like series where they do different tales within their world done by different dungeon masters and game masters. And Brennan Lee Mulligan was the game master for a 4-part series. Mm-hmm. And you know how it's going to end if you're a fan of Critical Role because you know what the Calamity is. But the finale came out yesterday. It's 6 hours long.
Oh, wow. I just caught up. I just listened to the 3rd episode today.
It's a long boy. And I wept. I wept many times. I wept. I was emotionally distraught. And that's what I'm excited about right now is for more people to enjoy fictional storytelling through a team-based game.
That's excellent.
It's pretty great. I highly recommend. Mm-hmm. Outside of what I enjoy, I hope you enjoyed this episode. You can find us wherever podcasts can be found. Please make sure to rate, review, and subscribe if you haven't already. You can follow us on Tumblr, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at Wench Bench Pod. And if you want to reach out, you can send us an email at wenchbenchpod@gmail.com. All of the art for the Wench Bench was designed by the wonderful Tessa Joyce Riecken. You can find her on Twitter and Instagram at Werevile. And for anyone that's a Spotify listener, you can give us star ratings now. Spotify's our most used app for this podcast. So please give us stars.
Yes, please.
Please. Thank you. And thanks for listening. And we'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
And we have the sacrificial lamb.
The sacrificial lamb? No, I didn't hear your dog. Oh, your mic only picked you up.
Yes. I mean, that's good. It's supposed to. But as soon as I said the sacrificial lamb and paused, he went, woo.
Good
He's
for
adorable.
you, Dutch. Yes.
And perfectly timed. He's just upset that I'm not petting him.
He's a movie dog now.
Yes, he has his own thoughts.